President Muhammadu Buhari will tomorrow host a national security meeting right here in the nation's capital. And speaking of President Buhari, well, earlier on, he did say that the decision of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, to launch new designs and replace high-value Naira notes had his support. And he's convinced that the nation will gain a lot from doing so. While speaking in the Hausa radio interview with the famous journalist Halilu Ahmed Gutso and Kamaluddin Sani Shaway, to be aired on Wednesday morning, President Muhammadu Buhari said reasons given to him by the CBN convinced him that the economy is stood to benefit from reduction in inflation, currency counterfeiting, and the excess cash in circulation. In a statement signed by his senior special assistant, Garba Shehu, the president says people with illicit money buried under the soil will have to change with this. But workers, businesses with legitimate income will face no difficulties at all.
All right, to discuss the CBN announcement and, of course, Mr. President's backing of that announcement and the new series of Redesign 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes and its challenges is Associate Professor Sam Amadi and a Rise News analyst. Very warm welcome.
Thank you.
The President has given a presidential support to it, and he says, look, this redesign of high-value Naira notes has its blessings, and it's going to help the economy. It's, only the big men like you that are fretting already. The small businesses and small companies are going to do well from it and gain tremendously.
Well, I think first, this settles the issue of whether Mr. President was informed or not. Obviously, nobody expects the Governor of the Central Bank to embark on this kind of very high-profile monetary activity without a president's approval. By the way, Section 19 of the CBN Act is very clear that it's the president who approves. And the Central Bank is designed all over the world to be an independent institution in terms of its decisions. So if you look at issues around printing and burning of currency, they don't need any approval from anybody. But the law says when it comes to redesign and redenomination, they have to get express approval of the president. And people forget that the present system of government does not mean that the minister acts as president allows him. There's no constitutional responsibility for the Minister of Finance, unlike the Attorney General that has some constitutional responsibility that must be carried by the Attorney General, or Minister of Petroleum in terms of the old Petroleum Act, and of course the new PIA. But in terms of the Minister of Finance or any other minister, Section 5 says the president exercises executive power isn't the president, who can exercise by himself, the VP, minister, or any other public official. So the monetary policy is part of the executive function.
Right.
By CBN Act has been hived off and given to the Governor of Central Bank. Now, even the one that the president exercises, he can outsource to anybody. So if the governor had sent the memo to the president and the president did not consult or ask for the opinion of the Minister of Finance, it has nothing to do against it. It's a due process.
Amadi, the law is the law. We know that for a fact.
Sure.
But for us looking from the outside, for a Minister of Finance who is in charge of the economy of Nigeria to sit at the National Assembly and tell legislators, I am not aware of this. The lack of synergy in the economic team is what worries a lot of Nigerians by that statement, not necessarily about the law or the legality of it all.
So if you say you're not aware, that means the president is running a system that is in silos. Okay, so he deals with his Minister of Finance in one issue, he deals with the CBN governor on another issue. But you're right, as an economic issue, because this has implications not just for security, for justice, for everything. So the fault is with the president. It's not the responsibility of the governor of Central Bank, actually, to go and, since the memo is there, he presumes. But again, if there was interagency coordination, the senior governor also knows that the Central Bank, the Minister of Finance should know that there will be redenomination and redesign, because he will have to explain as the manager, quote unquote, of the national economy on behalf of Mr. President. But you see, now moving away from that, so there's clarity now. The President is aware. He gave approval, but probably he ought to have informed his Minister of Finance, but depending on the president's style of governing, lack of coordination, the economic team is basically not really working, functional. It's just silos. You meet the president to give approval, the Minister of Transport goes, they get approval. So, but beyond that, the question is, what are the implications of this? And it won't have much economic impact. I mean, this argument that it could help control inflation, as I said, but it can also, if not well managed, increase inflation, because the inflationary pressure of consumption. For example, now, many people have stolen money or got money and parked somewhere, whatever, may be forced to start purchases, building, luxury items. If they can't take those funds to formal structure, to the banks, for deposit. Well, if you deposit 3 billion right now in any bank, the trigger EFCC.
Yeah.
Now, if you have to prove the EFCC Act, the amended Act, gives EFCC the power to ask you to explain the source of your earning. So the underground, the unintended consequence might be pressure on consumption. Purchase of items, buildings, things that are luxury to as part of money laundering.
What pressure is this proposal having right now on the Nigerian currency against the dollar?
It's increasing. For example,
is it speculation or what?
For example, we're talking about dollar about 800 now. So what that means is that demand and supply affects the rate. So people are going to push a lot of their funds
of the Naira now.
Of the Naira into dollar, since dollar is not going through a redesign. So you're going to see now the BDCs with their lax supervision, with their connivance and the corruption at high level of banking structure, they can easily move this money and get dollar and store.
And if they move it, the Naira, they are going to deposit in the banks, and EFCC and ICPC, and the central bank.
That's the key point. So the issue around 3 factors here. One is control of illicit funding, as a form of anti-corruption. Now, it depends also on the strong monitoring, enforcement, and regulation. So the EFCC and the French authorities have to track, monitor that these transactions are going on, follow them through, and enforce it. Now, but if they are corrupt, oftentimes we've seen allegations implicating leaders of these agencies.
But somebody is going to use 3, 4, 5, 10 billion naira to buy dollars. Where on earth? What kind of work would he have done?
Such person should have been arrested. But the point is that connivance at the highest level. You can say, for example, at the highest level.
Some will even say, because the central bank governor during his briefing did say one of the reasons why this policy is important at this time is that 80% of the money in circulation is in people's hands, not in the banks, which has its own implications. But at the end of the day, the ordinary Nigerian is trying to find out how this is beneficial to them. I ask this because the pressure on the dollar, where it's going for 800
on the
Naira now, the pressure now, we're a consuming economy. We import almost everything.
Yes. So
we know the inflationary figures right now, more than 20% as it stands. So where is the win for the ordinary Nigerian, this new policy of the CBN? That is my question.
I'm not saying they win, because, for example, if you say you want to mop up excess
liquidity.
Now, it won't necessarily translate to economic benefit for the ordinary people in the short to medium term. If you allow people who are holding cash to buy up dollars, it increases the exchange rate and then impacts also on other consumption. Again, it might ironically increase inflation if people use these funds and purchase, and those purchases drive up consumption of other goods. And then if the inflationary pressure will lead to price increase. So essentially, what this can achieve for us, and that depends on the integrity of the regulatory institutions, is that we trap cash in the hands of criminals, kidnappers, looters, who probably will have no access to formal exchange.
Ahmed Gumi today speaking in that light. He's saying that now they're going to start asking for dollars.
Well,
more pressure on
the unintended consequence.
Naira.
Well, if you don't match it up with increased security operations, so if you allow people to be kidnapped, they're going to ask for dollar, and people will use their Naira to go and buy dollar. But the key point here is that if it's done well, it has the possibility of helping us catch those who are keeping this Naira, those who can't account for how they made it. Because, by the way, if somebody has Naira and he can account for how he made those funds, maybe a trader who has daily turnover, there's no problem. Like Prince said, he can go to the bank and exchange your money. But those who don't have, those who can't, because you see, CBN can only, EFCC can only follow through for money laundering if they can find the money, if they can see you spend it beyond their capacity. But in this case now, they have opportunity to watch people go to the bank with billions. And the question will be, how did you make the money? And therefore, it gives opportunity to trap that fund to also prosecute. But all this depends on assumption that these regulatory institutions are going to be honest, diligent, and there will be no high-level connection to allow some criminals
amongst
to come to the back door
and use the bank. Well, let's hope too, because there's one critical agency, involved in financial issues, the police fraud unit, domiciled at the federal, the CID and the rest, But
and even the NFIU?
Yeah, NFIU. But one critical question, I don't know if it is synonymous with third world economy. Should the Central Bank of Nigeria be funding a second tier forex market? Is it done? Tell me where.
Conventional.
Tell me where it is done in other countries.
It's not that brings issue around the central bank and proper activities. For example, under Soludo, there was an essence to improve the independence of the central bank. The result is that the central bank core functions are not what the central bank end up doing. For example, there's also issues around developmental banking, that the central bank gets to involve in development banking. And the central bank advocates will say, look, because of the unique challenges of development, because of the underdeveloped money markets and capital markets, the central bank sometimes takes a responsibility to drive the economy in a way that conventional central bank or the treasury in the US or other central bankers all over the world may not be involved in those. So it has cost benefit. If the central bank is so immersed in some of these non-conventional central bank responsibilities, they lose the integrity, they lose the independence, and they now become part of a political class who may be winner and loser. But if they stick to conventional central bank responsibility, like the Fed will do, then the argument is that you might be missing out on important roles that the central bank can play. And if you look at exchange rate regime, whether it's fixed or floating or mixed floating fixed, the idea is that people are experimenting. Some developing countries think that the central bank should be flexible enough to do a lot of things, as long as it's geared towards public interest. But I think
for something that is damaging Nigeria's
economy. But that's supposed not to be central bank responsibility. But oftentimes, not just officially, but also unofficially, central bankers sometimes make the mistake of getting involved in the things that are even arguably illegal, unethical, but maybe serving some strategic interest. And that's why the issue around central bank is capture. Oftentimes, it's supposed to be an independent institution. But again, if those in the political class have captured the central bank now begins to make policies that you discover in the long term is not for public good, but serving special interests that is, powerful.
Dr. Sam Amadi, for your in-depth analysis tonight, we say thank you.